All right. Well, welcome to the session today. This is the sixth and final webinar that we had scheduled for our series of presentations on the portal. Today's presentation is going to be focusing on case management and the IEP, but specifically what we're focusing on is the transactions in the portal, not so much on policies. And I say that because we have different individuals of different programs on the webinar. And so your programs may drive different policies and procedures. For Title III, we're going to be doing some additional hands-on training and maybe some scenario-based training as you work with individuals and how you would be utilizing these transactions. And in some instances for Title I, you may not have used these transactions or your policies doesn't require you to use the transactions, but for Title III, you are required to use the transactions in the portal to enter an individual employment plan. So we're going to go over that. And again, this is a demo on how to enter the plan and do an IEP, and additional policies and procedures will follow at a later date. So as far as the website that we use for training, I want to stress that we are using the training region. We are not doing anything in production. So if you are at home or at your office and you want to play around with the transactions, make sure you're in the training region doing this. I know one of the questions that came up was for Title I, and if you have access to the training region, I'm going to follow up with the data team to see what that process is for you all and to make sure that you do have access to this as users so that you're able to go in and as a staff person in the training region. As far as objectives, we're going to cover how to provide case management as a whole. So what is it? Just kind of defining that. Where is the case management profile located in the portal? So we're going to show you where that is. Creating an IEP and closing an IEP, because it's very important that we don't leave those individual employment plans open, specifically because we have other programs that are utilizing that same transaction. So we'll talk about that and touch on why it's important to close that. We're also going to cover a few reminders on case management, the IEP, and any case notes that you're entering. So just kind of defining case management. Case management is an extensive service-oriented approach to helping customers overcome employment barriers. These barriers can be real or perceived, with the goal being to enable customers with significant employment barriers to obtain and retain employment. So what does case management include? Well, it includes an objective assessment summary, an individual employment plan or service strategy, and follow-up counseling notes. That is all found within this plan folder of the case management profile. As a reminder, staff must add activities and services outside of that plan folder and close the cases when you're finished. So when is case management needed? And I know this is just a few of the reasons that someone might be enrolled in case management. It is not all inclusive, but let's say you're working with someone who has gaps in their work history and they're having a hard time finding a job. That might be somebody you put in case management. Maybe they have an alcohol or drug addiction and they've lost their job due to tardiness and frequent absenteeism. Maybe they've been in incarceration and now they've been released from prison. They've served some time in jail and now they've come out and they're trying to find jobs and they're having a hard time. Maybe they lack education and they're needing that to become employed. In those instances, we may be referring them to other entities. Maybe it's Title II that we're referring them to. But those individuals may be in case management and you're tracking the outcomes of those activities. Maybe they have a disability, and that's a reason we've put them in and they're having a hard time finding employment, and maybe we refer them out to GVRA. Economic and social barriers like homelessness. It could even be a perceived barrier to employment. So if the customer believes that there are certain things that are preventing them from getting a job, and this is someone we're working with on a regular basis, you may want to put them in case management to track all the services, referrals, and activities that you're doing and to be able to follow up with that person. And then, of course, an individual who's enrolled in intensive and training services are likely to have an IEP. So who provides case management services? Now, from the Title III side, just pointing out that for Wagner Pizer or JBSG, we know all veterans in case management by a JBSG staff are an IEP is completed on those individuals. So for anyone being served by the Disability Veterans Outreach Program staff, those individuals are placed in case management by JBSG and they do an IEP. Migrant and seasonal farm workers are also in case management, and an IEP is required by Wagner Pizer staff who are serving those individuals. And then, of course, any customer with a barrier that may be a returning customer to Wagner Pizer and would benefit from case management services, then we would put them in case management and complete an IEP. Others may include Title I, so adult and dislocated worker participants in WIOA Title IB intensive and training services. Another group that I do want to stress is also utilizing the portal is Georgia Department of Labor. So Georgia Department of Labor has a program called the Reemployment Services and Eligibility Assessment Program. And anyone who participates in that program is required to be co-enrolled with Wagner Pizer. And as a part of that, the Georgia Department of Labor staff are creating individual employment plans on those individuals, and those are placed in the portal. So you may find that you're trying to put an IEP in the system and it's not closed out. A lot of times it may be a RESEA participant that has been placed in the portal. And in those instances, you would be contacting workforce at worksourcega.org to close out that IEP. And I am getting with Georgia Department of Labor to ensure that they're closing those IEPs out. So how do you provide case management? One, you're going to complete a summary assessment to identify the needs and barriers. That might be using a form or an assessment test. There's various ways that you're determining what those needs and barriers may be. You're also going to be creating an individual employment plan, and that offers an ongoing strategy to identify employment goals and achievement objectives, developing an appropriate combination of services for the participant to achieve employment goals, and documenting those services and the achievement of the goals that you've set in the system. So it's a way to track all those services that we've provided and how they get to the end goal, which generally is employment. Now, staff must work with individuals to identify those barriers to employment. However, their barriers may require services that we may not be able to offer. Often those are supportive services. So you may end up providing a person with a list of resources as referrals for assistance with barriers. So for example, take food banks or clothing closets or homeless shelters that you're referring individuals out. Now, when you do that, you must document those services and case notes. And that helps us, anyone that's in the system serving that customer, what's been going on with that person and what referrals and resources we've already introduced them to be able to get them to the end goal of employment. Some key elements in the case management process: you have an objective assessment, and that's where we are collecting information to develop that individual service strategy or individual employment plan. Sometimes it might be an interest assessment that you've administered, and based on that assessment, the individual is interested in a particular occupation. Or another tool was used to assess their needs and specific service requests that were identified. So like on the Title III side, we also have a How May We Help You form that we utilize to figure out what are some of the services that individuals need or are requesting. And then set those employment and education goals. A specific occupation or occupational cluster is to be identified when you set that. And you'll see in the system, when I show you the transactions, the system kind of walks you through it and kind of forces you to put those in. Training and supportive services needed. So if there were any training and supportive services, you want to make sure that you document that. And then, of course, document the referral. Schedule of activities and services. So what are all the activities that you have planned for the participant? Maybe they're coming back to go to a resume workshop, or maybe you're going to assist them with developing a resume, or maybe they're going to come back for mock interview for interviewing skills. Any achievement objectives or benchmarks to measure progress towards the ultimate attainment of the employment goal. And then lastly, follow-up services. Now, I do want to state not all programs require follow-up services, so you need to check with your individual program policies. However, that follow-up may be entered in the portal as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a live demo. Now, what I've done is I've already pulled up the case management profile, and I'm on the plans link where the plan will be entered. But I do want to state that there is also some opportunities in here for you to document other things. So you have your activities link to document your services. You have your case notes link to document any case notes that are outside of this plan. You also have this paths link over here, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. And it is loading. Okay. Now on this, I want to scroll all the way down to the very bottom, and you see these assessments. There's actually assessments that live in the portal, that it's those Onet assessments. And so you can actually have them take them in here, and it will actually record it to their profile, and then you can document it in their plan as well. So I just wanted to give you that, because I know sometimes we'll take them to another site to do it, but there are some links within the system that you can utilize. So now I'm going to go back over to the plan. And I'm actually going to start off with creating an objective assessment. Okay, so now the first thing that's going to pull up is it's going to want me to identify my program. For me personally, I'm part of Wagner Pizer, but you may be WIOA Title I, someone else might be trade, etc. And you see all the different groups. Now I'm going to choose Wagner Pizer, and then I'm going to choose my office. Now, if I scroll down, the assessment create date, that's today's date, because this is when I'm just now starting this. I have the ability to attach an active plan, but right now I haven't done the IEP, so I don't have a plan to attach to this. So I'm going to scroll all the way down. And if I have any notes that I want to document, I can put some overall notes of what might be occurring with this customer to give an individual an idea of what may be happening, or kind of a story. I'm going to hit next. Now, I want to point out, as I've hit next, you see a path at the top of the page, and you see each individual links that it's going to take me through. And when I get to some of these links, I'm going to talk about being sensitive to the delivery of how you're working with some of these customers, because some of this stuff is very sensitive information, and you'll see that as we get to it. So on this particular page, this is program expectations. So the first question is, are you seeking immediate employment? So let's just say in this example, the person it's yes. And what is it that they're seeking? Maybe they're seeking a retail position. And that's to kind of maybe hold them over, and maybe they also want to do training, but to pay the bills, maybe they need to get a retail position now while they go to school. I'm going to come down. And then what are the employment expectations? So like for this particular individual, when they created their account, their background was as a sales manager, but maybe they want to get out of that occupation, or they're okay with getting in this temporarily, but long-term, they want to do something else. And let's say that particular occupation might be a CDL driver. So they might select occupation, and then you're going to put in here what it is you're searching. And then you're going to select that particular occupation, and it's going to write it here. Then you're going to come down, and any employment types, what is the rules behind what they're looking for? Are they looking for full-time, part-time, etc.? This is for you as you continue to assist the person. What is it that their goals are? What is the objective? And that's where you're starting. You're assessing all of these things at the very beginning. Now, do they need help in career planning? Let's just say yes. Most of the time, that's the case that they're with us. And then seeking training services. Maybe we've talked to the person and they want to be a CDL driver, but they really don't have a CDL. So that means you would want to select yes here. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom, and I'm going to type in CDL training. And then I'm going to come down. And for anyone that's youth, there's a field here, seeking post-secondary education youth, yes or no. Any other assistance expected, you can summarize it here, and then you're going to hit next. Now here's the education page. This is pulling in from their registration, so this individual has a degree and they're not attending any school, but you can update that here. I'm going to come down. Are they skills deficient, or what are some of the things that are going on with them as far as their education? Are they a high school dropout? Are they basic skills deficient? And I know for some of you, you have tests to assess these things, and then you come back and document that. Maybe this person is an English language learner and they need to go back to school to do that. Maybe we're going to refer them out to Title II to take some of those classes. And you see, as I go through these, there's a lot of different fields that you are able to mark and utilize within the portal if you are not already using these. It's taking me to any degrees that this individual has obtained. Let's say I'm working with this person, they've gone back to school, they've obtained a degree. I can always go back and add a new degree here. I'm going to select next. And maybe they've gone back and gotten a certification. Once this person gets their CDL, I can come back here and put that in here by selecting add a new certificate. I'm going to select next. Any employment, what are their transferable skills? I've done an assessment with them and I've documented those transferable skills here. It's going to pull up their employment history, what they've entered in their registration, and you can always add to that if you find that there's something missing. And then maybe they're low income and I need to document that. So I can add any income information here as well. I'm going to select next. Now, this is where we get to some of the sensitive information. So child care is not necessarily what I'm talking about, but you will see as I scroll down the page where it gets into a little more sensitive areas. For work readiness, maybe they have a child care issue. And so you want to document that, but then you're going to refer them out to supportive services. Maybe you're referring them to CAPS. I'm going to come down and here's transportation. If the person wanted to be a CDL driver, but then they're telling you their current license is suspended, you probably know that's likely not going to be a good fit for them. This also can affect their ability to be job ready. Depending on where they're located, are they near a bus line that's going to be able to get them to where they need to go? And so these are items that you can check. What is it that they have and what is it that they're lacking? And then down below, you have contact information, work attire. Do they need interviewing clothes? If so, maybe you're going to check that. You're going to refer them over to a clothes closet. And then you have the emergency food nutritional needs. Maybe there's a food bank nearby that you're referring them to. And then you can summarize what their work readiness is here. Now, if I come down, you have an area for workplace behavior. This is where we really get into some sensitive information, and I want to caution people on just checking stuff and not having a conversation with the customer on what you're documenting, because at any point in time, if I was the job seeker, I could come to the state office and say, I'm requesting an open record. And an open records request means that we are required to provide all of those screens, any documentation we have on the customer, they can request copies of that. And they would go through the appropriate request process to get an open record. You're not necessarily going in and printing a bunch of stuff and giving it to them. There's a process through the agency to do open records. But I say all that specifically because if you're checking stuff, and let's say I said this person has a negative work attitude, but you never had that conversation with the person, they're probably not going to like the fact that you check that. So you want to make sure that anything that you put in the system, you're having that conversation and coaching the person, which essentially is case management. And you see like resume information, application completion, Appearance and hygiene issues, that again is a sensitive topic. And so those are things that, again, you want to be careful on. And then, of course, anything that's related to like PII or HIPAA, those should be secondary files. You should not be putting that into the portal. So you wouldn't specifically say the person is currently in rehab with ABC hospital, blah, blah, blah. You would be very careful with what you're documenting. And each group has your own policies on that. Now I'm going to select next. And here is any health and behavioral observations. So there's things like, if someone says they need dental work, is there any partners that you can refer them out to, or, Medicaid or whatever it may be. Scrolling down, behavioral type things that you have seen, substance abuse. Maybe they're telling you they are seeking referral for treatment. Again, anything you're documenting here, you are notifying the customer that as they're telling you these things, you're documenting it just so you can help them find and connect to the appropriate resources. And then you're coming down, living environment. There's information on housing. So if they're homeless, home life, maybe they're a victim of domestic violence. Coming down, economic factors and financial situations, vocational and occupational factors. And you see all this different information that we have in here. Other assistance received, maybe we've already, they're already getting services through Job Corps or Evoke Rehab or Wagner Pizer, etc. Barriers to employment. Maybe they don't have a lot of work history. Maybe they do need to go back to school and get some additional education. And you can kind of see all the different areas that you have available to document. And then, of course, any assessments regarding ADA and access. And then you could summarize all that here on what is going on with that customer. I'm going to hit next. Okay. And then this is the criminal background information. So maybe they tell you they've been arrested. Depending on what type of background it is, let's say they tell you it was a felony. And so you come down and you put the felony information on here. Then at that point, you may want to tell them about the work opportunity tax credit if they've been released in the last year. They could potentially market that to an employer for a tax credit. Maybe you're going to market federal bonding. So these are all things that you could be documenting as you work with the customer. And then any test. So let's say I want to document some of the skills test. I can click basic skills test and it opens this up and I can select add assessment. And then I can document all the different assessments that I've done and then the results of that. And I know for Title I, you may utilize this more than Title III would be using. Coming down to other testing, I can add an assessment. And maybe this is going to be, let's see, they've got like work keys, Onet interest inventory, etc. So there's several, that's a typing test. So there's a lot of different tests that could be administered and documented here. I'm going to select next. Maybe I'm going to refer them out to some additional agencies so I can add that referral information here within the system. Now I'm just going to, for sake of time, go ahead and hit finish. And then I'm going to come down and you see that this objective assessment has been completed. However, there is one more step that I need to take. I'm going to select edit. And all this stuff that we just talked about with the customer, you're going to capture a signature from the applicant and your own signature. So you're going to select capture signature, apply it, You're going to do the same thing with the customer. And then you're going to scroll down and you're going to hit finish. Okay, so that's done. Now I need to create the IEP. So I'm going to select Create Individual Employment Plan. And I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to put today's date, my region, my office, and I'm going to select Next. And then here I am going to actually add my goals. And you see at the top, I have all these tabs, and it's basically taking me through this path. So I'm going to select Add New Goal. And then what is the goal? Is it an employment goal, a training goal, schooling? I'm going to say employment. And is it a short term? Maybe it is. My short-term goal is to get a retail position. And then I can always go back and add additional goals. So today I established this. What date do I think I'm going to be done with this? So maybe I could say May 12th of 2024 is when the expectation is that this person would be working in retail. And then the completion status is going to remain open until this is actually, the person's actually been hired. And then you're going to scroll down, you're going to hit save. And then you see my goal. Now, if I wanted to add the training goal, so maybe this person wanted to go back and get their CDL. So now the new goal would be a training goal with the expectation that they're going to get the CDL. Now I'm going to select next. Now is the objectives. So I can add a new objective. My goal was to get a retail position. So it's pulling, you see how it builds upon each other? So I put in the retail position as a goal. Now it takes me to the objective, pulling in that initial goal. I'm with Title III. And my objective is employment. Today was the date I established it. I've reviewed it today. And any notes that I want to add, and I'm going to hit save. Now there are some predefined objectives. So if I select predefined objectives, I can also add some additional objectives that are already set in the system. I'm with Wagner Pizer. And so scrolling down, you see we have resume writing, counseling, mentoring, skills assessment, and production probably has a few more than what this has. So I'm just going to cancel out of that, but I wanted to show you that it is there. And then I'm going to hit next. And it is thinking, there we go. And then as you can see, it wrote over my services. Now I do want to say, you see this objective assessment in here twice. That's because I entered one this morning and deleted it off. That's why you see it in there twice. So I'm going to hit finish. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to connect these two together because this objective assessment goes with this IEP. So I can go here to edit. And then I can attach that plan and it pulled it in. And then I'm going to come down and hit finish. And it's thinking. Okay, training region. Training region often is slower than production. Okay, so now this is tied to each other. In the real world, you're going in and you're printing this and you're giving the copy to the customer in case management. Now, let's say time has passed and now you're finished working with this customer and you need to close it out. If you do not close this out, when another program comes behind you, they're having problems with putting in a IEP. And I know that because it's usually stemming. I know Georgia Department of Labor, they're utilizing this. And so if they, a lot of times you may find one that's open that has been entered by Georgia Department of Labor, and their appointments are a one-time appointment, but they're still required to create an IEP. And so I'm getting with them to make sure that they're closing these out. And if you have an instance where you're trying to put something in and you can't because it's open, then you need to email workforce@worksourcega.org to get that closed out. And then we'll get it closed and you'll be able to start yours. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select edit. So let's say I'm ready to close all this out. You know that we were working from left to right. It took us from plan, goals, objectives, and services. Well, now I want to close this out. The system does have an edit in place to tell you that you're going to actually have to start from right to left. You're going backwards to close it out. But I want to show you what the system's going to do. If I said I want to close this plan today, and by the way, I also meant to tell you, you need to come back into the IEP and put the signatures on as well. IEP requires the signatures, just like I just walked you through on the objective assessment, but let's pretend that I did that. I'm going to hit next. It's telling me at the top, the plan cannot be closed because open objectives or goals exist. So I have to go to the objectives. So I'm going to start, if I were to start here, there's nothing to close out. You'll see there's nothing I can do here. I'm going to go to objectives and you see that this objective is open. So I need to select edit and I need to close it out. So let's say they completed today. In the real world, it would be, a future date, which is equivalent to the current date. Then we're going to hit closed. And I'm going to say it was successful. Now, it could be unsuccessful. You want to document it for whatever it is that occurred, and you'll put your notes in and you'll hit save. And as you can see, it shows closed. Now I'm going to go to the goals. And I need to edit that one. And this person obtained employment. I close it out. It was successful, and I would put my notes in, and then I would hit save. Now I can finally come back here to the plan and actually close it, and then hit next. And then if I go up to my account and I go back to the plan, then you see it is closed. So officially someone can come behind me and actually open up a new plan. Now I want to say this. Again, make sure that even though you documented all this stuff in here, the Pearl, that's our reporting that goes up to USDOL, it's reading your activities that you're entering. So you need to remember to enter activities and then remember to enter case notes. Let's say you're working with someone that may not necessarily be in case management, and so you're not doing an IEP. We should see case notes on every individual that you are basically providing direct services. There shouldn't be instances where we see services, but no case notes. The case notes tell us more of the story. Services only tell us part of the story. So I wanted to remind you of that. Now I want to go back to my presentation. So just kind of covering what a recap of what we talked about. We defined case management, what it includes, when it's needed, who provides it, and why. We did a demonstration in the training environment on how to create an IEP and where all those little screens are that you can document this information. We discussed documenting services and activities for individuals in addition to your IEP, and then what should be included in counseling records or the account, and making sure, again, that we're not putting in any PII in any of those notes. Again, that would be a secondary file that's outside of the system. We shouldn't be putting any HIPAA information in there. Be sure to enter case notes on customers to tell the story of what is happening. Again, not every customer may have an IEP, but they should have a case note. Staff must always enter services. However, service entry only tells part of that story. Case notes are very helpful for staff coming behind you and a record to know what occurred on that visit and what the next step is, especially if they're not in case management. Again, staff must close out an IEP when they are no longer working with the customer. If you do not close out the IEP, it will cause an issue for other programs who are attempting to enter a new one. And again, it's dependent upon your policies, procedures, rules behind your different programs as to when you should be closing those things out. So, with that said, I want to open it up for questions. So do you all have any questions for us? And was there any questions entered in the chat?
There are no questions in the chat.
Okay, so it looks like, is there anybody got their hand raised or somebody wants, I think I see one. Jason?
Yes, ma'am. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm a DevOps, and I have I know we need to go through and do the closure under the program tab, right? I have many. I have a few that I had taken over from a DevOps that has left, and they were already employed, but they've been employed for a long time, and they're well past their follow-ups. But I've requested their information for their employment, but I've received nothing back from them. How can I close them out?
Well, we should not be exiting anyone or entering any soft exit information. That is done automatically. So as far as like exiting Wagner Pizer as a whole, and that program, then it's gonna, what we do is we actually look for wages to post. So the data team is doing what we call a soft exit, meaning we're going out after 91 days of no service. It's looking to see if the person's gone back to work. If they have, it's going to, or even if they haven't, with no service entry, it's going to soft exit, and it's going to be either a negative or a positive. Positive meaning they're employed. And then it's going to look at their earnings, and we follow that for the 4 quarters after exit. So there's a lot of processes that happen behind the scenes. As far as the IEP, that's the only thing that you would need to be closing out, and you can document in there that it's just unsuccessful contact and that you're going to just need to close out that IEP. Again, make sure that you are also discussing that with your program management and what processes you have with your program, because Atoya may be setting some things specifically for DevOps, and so you want to follow that. And I do want to eventually circle back on each individual program and make sure that we're addressing those for each of you, and that each of the program managers have something set, because it's going to be a little different for Wagner Pizer as a whole, and even Title I, they have different policies. Yes, Sherry.
Yes, I'm going to go back a little ways, because there was a question that I had when you were discussing the workplace behavior and the PII and HIPAA information. Is it, I'm assuming that, well, when you went through this section, you did say to be very careful with these documents. Are we actually going to handle documents? Is it expected that they will be submitting certain verification of certain things, and then and how do we file them? Because you were saying the separate file.
What I mean by that, and more so the DevOps are going to run into this than frontline ES. But let's say someone has a medical issue that's going on, and they proceed to tell you all of this information, and they're getting services through a particular medical facility. We should not be putting that in notes within the portal that everyone's able to view. That the DevOps likely would be having their own case files separate outside of the system to document any medical type information, because everyone has access to the system, meaning I could view what the DBOPs are entering and they can view what you're entering. And so that's why it's important that, with HIPAA, to meet HIPAA, you can't share all that with everyone. And so that's why we say separate files, meaning you would have to have your own desk files if you have somebody in case management. For you, Sherry, you're likely not going to have a lot of people in case management unless you're serving MSFWs, but that's really more so going to be maybe your more significant offices where they have a lot of MSFW traffic. But it is possible that you would be serving someone in case management. Maybe you have somebody that returns on a regular basis that you work with all the time. That's somebody you probably would want to put in. But again, we're going to have some more hands-on training for each of you and have a final and formal policy on these things in writing. But I do want to stress that on this presentation so that nobody goes back, starts putting stuff in, and we have HIPAA violations in the system.
Thank you.
So that pretty much concludes the session if you don't have any other questions. And if you do think of something later on, feel free to email the policy mailbox, and it's on the screen, and we will get back with you. All right. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of the week.